I was going to write a new fairy tale, and I didn't, so I will, I guess. Well, let's start off with gossip, since everyone likes gossip. Tell you what kind of guy I am. This may or may not be true, but it's to get us started. Some of you may not be surprised that I periodically receive reprimands. Is that what you call them? Is that rebukes that go backwards? Reprimands, insults, attacks, all through there. Mostly from out of town. They don't do it in person, but I get letters from mystics and mystical teachers and gurus here and there about the world, and they attack me for what they say is my attacks on their effort. Not them individually, unless they're really got their head gasket blown out. But they treat what they've heard or seen TV shows or heard about what I was doing, they treat it as like, well, you're engaged in some sort of mass attack on, our kind of stuff, and we thought you were one of us. All right, whether that extract me from it, but after you people's heard all this, what I've been talking about, which I'm not attacking those kind of mystical, great transcendental efforts. If I was attacking anything, if I wanted to use their words, as I'm attacking the useless effort involved. And I was trying to find a group of people, because if you really are interested in such things, there's nothing more important and more fun in the world. But goddamn, to waste all your life and to find out that the people teaching didn't know what they were doing. They just had a great building, they had a great lineage. That's, if I was attacking anything, that's it. Is how much time you got to waste. Do you want a hobby, or do you want to actually do what you thought about one time when you were a child? And that's why I was thinking about writing a new fairy tale, new legend. Well, first, let's consider before I write the legend. Give me a few more seconds to stall here while I write it. I'm not going to write it until my lips start moving. But how about, to get it going, I can see a little preface here. How about we consider ephemerally, ad hocly for the second, that there are three ways you could live. You could sort of go a life which is, just sort of take life as it comes and kind of flow with it and that thing. But that is somewhat of a misnomer, because that's very limited as far as people who actually can, quote, take life at face value. They can go, hey, boy, that's life. Now, I know there are people who stand up and say that, and there are people here and there that will mouth such words, but if you try and look at their life, it's a very limited phenomenon. Who greater fits into that class are simply those who are the foot soldiers for life. Those most out in the ordinary run of life in the civilized world, out there every day humping it. Suits and ties, good haircuts, middle-class people. They're the ones, not even though they're as dissatisfied as anyone else. And they're trying to get ahead and et cetera. But in a sense, they take life as they find it. That is, their game of life, their great mystical personal quest is nothing mystical and personal at all. It's like to make more money, to get ahead, to become famous, to get promoted. That it's as though, we're just talking about ordinary people now, it's as though they looked around after, when they were a kid like you were, and everyone had this feeling that there's something great I could do even after I grow up that's probably more fun than even being a kid. And then they can't find what it is. And so this group, it's sort of, I'm putting words on it for you, it is as though they go, well, gee, I'm kind of disappointed. I ask around and nobody seems to know what to do about this. Drugs don't get it. Drinking's tearing me up. So what'll I do? Oh, crap. I'll get married anyway. I'll go on and finish school. Maybe something will turn up. I don't know. Maybe I'll forget it. And mostly they do. Now, they're the ones that I was really saying go with life. I don't mean in some real great philosophical sense of someone who says, well, you got to roll with the punches and, hey, that's life. They don't theorize about it in that manner. But they do, in a sense, take life as it is and just go with it. The second group would be those that seem to be critical of life. They're not that far removed from the first group, but it seems to be and all the way from specific active critics, real critics of life, contemporary commentators on the human condition, where they write, speak, that is, they try to make a living out of it. They try to get ahead by being a critic of everyone else. All the way from that to part of the middle class, which is part of the first group I mentioned, but rather than them really being actively involved in, look, I'd like to get ahead and be richer, I'd like to have my own business, or I'd like to expand my business. The second group, the critics, would be more like perhaps people who even work for these people. And they're still maybe middle class and decent, ordinary, rather bland creatures, citizens. But their attitude, if you actually ask them to try and theorize about life, and how can you be satisfied, if you ask them this kind of philosophical question, how can you be satisfied just working 9 to 5 and you're never going to get anywhere? Look at your boss, which let's say the boss, the guy that owns the company, would be my first group. And the second group goes, crap. Might drive yourself crazy. He's going to have ulcers, and I know he's already been through 3 wives, and he's got a mistress on the side. He's always, who needs that kind of aggravation? And I don't mean the common shot at that kind of person saying, well, it's sour grapes. It's not that. It's just that they have not, in the same sense as my first group, bought into the ordinary run of life. Now, they bought into it enough that they're not insane, they're not criminals, they're living the same kind of decent middle-class life, but their attitude is, something's rotten. They would be the ones to be more inclined to become an alcoholic, or to just drink constantly, or just always irritated and get ulcers. Both of those are the two main tango dancers. They're the ones that keep the ballroom of civilization going. And then there's the third group, which people like you would fall into throughout the ages. And that's people that really never get over the original feeling that, boy, life is great. There you are, a kid. And as you begin to get less kid-like, you get 6 or 7, 8 years old, and you think, boy, and even your peers and everyone around you, which is life, telling you, well, boy, now you're about to get grown, or you're growing up. You're no longer exactly a child. And at one time the feeling was, ooh, okay, I'll buy that, because you had no reason not to believe this, that, wait, boy, as much fun as I'm having now. And they say, well, you're about to grow up, and they smile. And you think, oh, it's going to get better. And it didn't. Not in that sense. That is, instead of it getting better, because in the beginning your mystical, let's say, quote, your mystical experience was, just being a kid. There's just being a kid. Don't make me explain it. If you don't think back, like I hear some of you laugh now, men and women, if you can't think back when you were 6 or 7 years old, and I say the fun of being a kid, if you don't think, whew, then I don't know what to tell you. Go crawl in the grave with Young or Freud or somebody. Just ordinary. Well, you got it. And so them saying, well, now you're no longer a kid. Next 2 months from now you'll start to school, and they'll say things that smile. Or you've got to start being more responsible, and all the words, and they smile when they do it. And go, huh? And so you think, oh boy, it's going to get better. I can't believe it. And in the sense of the fun it was of being a kid, it didn't get better. No, I'm not here telling tales out of kindergarten. I'm not attacking life. But in the sense of the fun you had as being a kid, when you got to be less and less kid-like, it did not become more fun. It became less fun because you became less kid-like. So let's assume, or we will assume, since I'm making the categories, that the third group would be people like you, and they never actually get over it. No. And as I said, in some miraculous way, you've managed not to become insane, to become an alcoholic, a drug addict. You hadn't become a professional pissed-off person. You don't constantly rail at life. I know some of you do. Everybody does, in a sense. But it's some way you manage to stay upright, and you can still remember this. That, boy, every time you hear something about it, you'd think, yeah. And you'd go look, maybe. Or you'd read a book for a while, the brand new book. To make it simple again, it's once you become less kid-like, or when you were kid-like and you thought it was going to be better when you got when everybody said, well, you're going to get grown and no longer be just a kid, and you thought, then if you had to describe it then, and you could have put words on it, I will suggest for our operational purposes, again, it would be like you thought, well, it's going to become now not just physical fun, which is great enough, but now it's going to become some kind of fun up at my other end, which I'll begin to understand what life's about. Just make it simple. And you find out that that was not what was in store. What was in store when they said, well, you're no longer just a kid, and next year you'll start kindergarten, you'll start school, and you're going to have to start being more responsible now, by the way, because now you'll be 7 next year. And you go, yeah, because you thought it all sounded like, well, now something good coming, and there wasn't something good coming. Not in that sense. What was coming was something non-good that they would begin, in fact, as opposed to you thinking, well, it's going to get better. They're saying, well, you're becoming a little man, and you thought, oh boy, it's going to be better. That's not what they meant. What they meant was, you got to quit doing what you're doing. You got to straighten up. Tie your shoes. We're going to get you a little school uniform. You got to wear a little sailor hat and look like a, some kind of lollipop walking down life is no longer. In other words, it was almost the opposite. Because rather than them saying, well, you're almost a little man now, you're going to have more responsibilities, and you thought, well, it'll be that I can take more information. I'm ready. God, I can't hardly wait. Or now you'll be able to go to school next year. And you say, oh, now I'll start having real fun. And you find that wasn't it. All they want to do is get you out of the house. And them saying you're about to be a man, you'll have more responsibilities. It wasn't like, we'll start telling you secrets. More responsibility was, start cleaning up your room. I'm not going to do it. You wash your clothes. And when you get through eating, put stuff up. You say, this is it. All right, the third group, though. The third group are people that do stay involved or try to stay involved in that original kind of open-ended neural expectation that never gets completely closed up, and you never get completely caught up in either one of the first two groups. And so then you would think, well, if people in the third group are still active at all, then they are active in the sense of trying to see past the kinds of things that are ordinarily available, the kinds of models, the kinds of ideas, the kinds of theories, the kinds of descriptions of life to which the first two groups subscribe, whether they want to or not. My fairy tale I was going to make up to new one is, I've hit it, as it would step off the curb several times in the last few years, but had never got my license number, so we're safe. We'll take another shot. What if? All right, let's say the people interested in such as this, if they don't find it absolutely insane, and they find that they're still interested in such as this. Then it would be quite easy if I said, to use me as a non-personal example, if I said, well, now the first thing we've got to understand is that all the information that people normally, my first two groups, what ordinary, sane, everyday people think, what they believe about life is not the correct explanations. Now, everybody in the third group they might shrug, but their feeling is, well, hey, that went without saying. We knew that. That's obviously true, or we wouldn't be here. They're obviously what they believe, religiously, systematically, politically, everything the ordinary people knows, what they say is true is not correct. Something's wrong somewhere. Hence, before I make the fairy tale really come to life and perhaps bite you on your ass, it would also explain, but most people would not think it needed an explanation, but it would explain why all the ideas, all the dreams, all the stories about some kind of would-be mystical traditions and practices are not only physically always a long way off. We already know that. It's always a long way off. If we're here, it's in Tibet. Now, I know people find it's hard to believe, but if we were in Tibet talking now, all of you would believe it's in Chicago. God, I just know it. If I could just, save enough yak herding money to buy a ticket to Chicago, And I'd climb up and down those skyscrapers until I found, one day I'd finally go up and I'd get off an elevator up on the 110th floor of a building, and there would be my guru sitting there in the cold. But there, not eating. Well, maybe a little Chinese takeout, but he's sitting there, and I would know immediately, it's my guru. He would have the smell of pork bellies on him. It goes without the need for any sort of persuasion with people that not only are the mystical traditions, the kinds of information that might be supporting such as this, or that you assume had to be somewhere, that the secret information, the true detailing of life, what the universe is, all that not only is it normally, spatially considered far away, which serves its purpose, but also that the effort to study it, even if you were there, if you were now transported to India or Tibet or Mongolia, that the study of it is extremely complex. Now it's just, again, if I said, well, now that's a fact, everybody would go, oh, yeah, well, hell, I knew that. Get to the point. We understand all that. It's got to be. But let's think a second. Not only do you automatically say, yeah, but there is, with no exceptions, there is a historical, verbal, well, oral and written, but a complete line of tradition that specifically says so. That if you read about a school, a so-called mystical or traditional school, 2,000 years ago, or if you read that there's one right now in a certain area of Turkestan, if you could find it, and somebody said, I've been there, and they talked about it, or they met somebody who'd been there. Anyway, they would say, well, the point is, there are people who have been there studying. You can't just pack up and go over there, even if you knew where it was, because you can't just go in like for the weekend retreat, like going to Big Sur or somewhere. It's not one of these things like, let's, feely and all spill our guts for the weekend and feel better. We're talking about people who go over there, they give up their life, and they move into a cave, or they move in this monastery, and then they start describing the practice, such as, Zazen, the sitting, the meditating, that goes on for years and years, and you do it 20 hours a day. Or it could be another form that you get up and you jump up and down all day, and you say Allah, or you say some secret word, or you stand there and you push against one of the walls of the monastery for 10 hours a day. You stand there and push, while knowing, you look at it, and nobody's ever going to push that wall down, and yet you do it, and the head of the monastery gives you some thought, that sort of thing. Everyone understands. You just accept, and you have all of that proof behind it that any possibility of ever making some kind of extraordinary intellectual, even though they've always called it spiritual, but now you understand it's up here in this part of the nervous system. It has to do with consciousness, not one's spiritual soul, which those of you that never thought, since they can't find the soul, you do understand that from the Western view, the soul is like Tibet. No, you can't get there, but that makes it easy. If you're looking for a bus station rather than trying to go somewhere. No one questions that it's got to be an extremely complex matter. And the schools will tell you if they put out brochures, and those that do not, the history, those who have been through past schools, any part of the world, under any guise, Sufism, Zen, anything. They will state, just as a matter of routine, of just describing it all, that this is a lifetime proposition. Trying to sit, even if the object sounds simple. Let's take some of the general Eastern past descriptions, that the whole point is to in some way still the mind. And if you can still the mind, in some way you will then be back into a direct, clear, unruffled connection to the Atman, to the cosmic core, to God, to the cosmic spirit. But you have got to in some way calm the mind, calm, and if they don't say mind, calm the animal spirit of man, calm the unrest that is a useless craving for the physical carnal world, and you've got to in some way still it, and then the voice of the universe, those kind of descriptions. And so you hear that, and it's not really necessary that they say, no, you can come join us if that's what you want. We'll let you come try it. But don't come here expecting that you're suddenly going to be blown away and have the experience in a week or a month. And you go, yeah. A year, yeah. 10 years, yeah. Maybe 20. You understand? But you accept it. I'm just not making fun. It is accepted that this is an extremely complex thing, to say the least, that you would just expect it. No one has to warn you. As soon as you hear it, you go, yeah, I know. That to be able to, I'm just going to pull together some of the terms I know they've used, to be able to pierce the complex illusionary veil of man's sensual perceptions is not an easy matter. That you've had a lifetime, you individually, of 40 or 50 years, or however old you are, of having your senses, your intelligence, your perception clouded by greed, by sex, by lust, by all of that. And you go, yeah. No, in other words, this has got to be an extremely, I keep trying to think, not real hard, but of a more sticky synonym for complex. But to describe and not just the practices, because some of the practices themselves seem rather simple, like sit and don't move for 20 hours a day. Mm-hmm. Just sit physically, and finally the mind will give up. The mind will one day calm down the same way that there you sit, not moving all day, in the position, whatever they tell you to do, just sit there and don't move. And sure enough, maybe after 20 or 30 years, it seems to happen, or they say it does. It's not that the practice itself physically seems simple, but then if they point out that they can say to you beforehand, you come to join, they say, now this is all you're going to be doing until further notice. It's open-ended. You're going to come here every morning with us and sit like everyone else. That's not the hard part. You think it is. The hard part is and then you fall into descriptions that I just tried to pull together for you. If they said, now, just sitting there is not the hard part. I know you're going to fidget for a while, but you can finally sit there. That's not it. The hard part is the way life has gotten your spirit, your soul, your mind, so entangled in the everyday affairs and all the carnal, crude, unmystical affairs that we're talking about. You can't come here and expect to have that kind of perception, that kind of understanding come upon you overnight, because you've had 40 years, aren't you 40? Yeah. You've had 40 years of life driving your mind in wrong directions, pulling you here and there, yeah, trying to make you famous, yeah, and you keep going through romances and you feel guilty, yeah. So don't expect, just because the practice, just the physical practice seems simple, the rest of it is a most complex affair. And you go, well, there's no doubt. Now let me see if I can make up another fairy tale. Now that's the third group. And everything I've described, none of those groups, the histories, none of the traditions are lying. Now I wasn't making fun when I tried to put together sort of an archetypical description that they would have, like, that life has taken your senses, and for 40 years, however old you are, it has pulled you here and there, that you have been driven by all the lusty, unmystical desires of your sex organs, your stomach, greed, envy, laziness. Yeah, man. So, just think about it. 40 years almost, as though, they used to like to give descriptions like, at one time we were all little clean flames, just, a clean spirit. We're open to the vibrations of the universe and the truth. And then it's as though we take on these layers, these coats that separate us from the truth, from higher vibrations, from mystical union with reality itself. The description, there's nothing wrong. It's the best they can do. But now, how about a fairy tale? A new legend. That sounds, fairy tale sounds cheap. A new myth, or legend, whichever sounds best. There was another universe where everything I described was also true. Same thing. Except with this. That the third group and their collective attitude, history, and teaching about the complexity of being able to pierce through the facade, the shadows, the misvibrations of physical, ordinary life that keeps one from any longer being in direct connection to the truth, to plain reality. The third group in this other universe, rather than them being subject to that description, which is fitting here, that's the best they can do up until now. But in this other place, rather than that being the attitude of to undertake this is a very complex situation. In this other universe, they look at it another way. Their teaching is this, that the people in the third group interested in this are trying to make the whole thing more complex than it is. Because the first two groups understand, the first two groups, as I described them, they're more or less the same in this other universe. More or less the same, except for this, the first two groups understand that life is a shooting match regarding people with a howitzer and one small bucket with a fish in it. That the first two groups understand life is so simple, life is point blank, life is the kind of things that the third group here talks about. The first two groups over there understand, well, life is what it is. They didn't even have it in terms of point blank or objective or, hey, that's the way life is. Because everybody knows that. You got me? In the third group over there, the traditions, the mystical practices are to take all that and make it more complex. Is that they do not undergo, let's assume that they've got similar practices such as sitting and meditating. They do not do that to try in some way to cleanse their perception and their spirit, to see the simplicity of life. They're trying to churn it up and make it more complex because everybody over there, the first two groups, just ordinary common people, see life like it is. And they go on. And the third group, rather than thinking, well, I've been misled and I lost something, and we've all lost something, they realize, well, there's nothing to lose. This is kind of a drag.
No.
I mean, here I am, 7 or 8 years old, and I know everything there is to know. I understand the purpose of life. And the first two groups go on. Do you understand? About like they do in our universe. They go, well, hey, that's life. There's nothing you can do about it. There is life. This is us. Things are like they are. And the first two groups the first two, they go on, just like they are. The third group, rather than now worrying about going to the other side of their planet, finding a mystical teacher, being prepared to devote a lifetime of trying to calm the spirit, calm the mind, cleanse the perceptions, to look through all of the many shadow realities, all of the many faux realities. Over there, everyone sees reality as it is. The third group goes, boy, that's a drag. That's boring. Rats. And so, their traditions, their mystical practices are to create, to make it more complex, to make it stickier. Weird? What if that universe is here? Did they get my tag number this time? If you're going to try to hit parts of local conditions, nobody asked me this, but if you're going to try to do it, try to see it when it's taken on the form of like a 60-year-old overweight woman with a lot of shopping bags and stuff, because usually if you're going to hit them, then you can get away. Especially, they look like they've got thick glasses, they can't get your tag number, they can't identify the car. For those of you who don't drive, of course, all that had to do with neural activity anyway. What if, I know I've pulled this, I just threw it out one night, but what if, in a quite real sense, not theoretical, but I have to say quite real because ordinary people can't mouth it, they could not even hold the idea, should they hear it and go, you're right, but it'd be like a hot coal, they just have to go, well, it's not even a hot coal, it's an irrelevant coal, which makes it. But what if the first two groups, what if all the non-mystical, what if, whatever you want to call them, all the dunder-headed, middle-class, bourgeois, Philistine, untalented, unperceiving, unfeeling, you know who we're talking about, everybody but us, of course, just the ordinary people of the world, what if all of them know what life is. I don't mean theoretically where life came from and the great answer. They looked around and, hey, here we are. And let's see, I'm picking out an age like they're 18 or 19 or maybe 12. And they go, well, let's see, it's 1994 and I've got how many? Jesus, I got 40 more years here. Well, make the best of it. No. They make the best of it if this make-believe universe that I pictured for you, if indeed it were here. Then when I say they make the best of it, as they complex it up, they stir it up with behavior, including talk, which ordinary people, that's all talk is a form of behavior. It's not reflective of any perception or understanding, not even reflective of any reflection. They just say it is. That's why they put the word in the dictionary, in case you never look. Reflection in all dictionaries is bigger. The font, the size is bigger than every other word in there, in case you never thought about it. Well, they think you won't notice. It's like a subliminal message for you to think, ooh, humans are up to something. My fellow man is thinking and musing and ruminating. The first two groups, could you see, if all of this had any validity, that they attempt to create a more complex world, if indeed they look around, and that's life. That the very thing in our universe normally, the third group, there would be mystics, there would be space travelers, there would be transcendental experiencers. The kind of thing they're looking for, of being able to pierce through the veil of needless complexity into the simple reality of life, that everyone else has already done it. Well, everybody, all three groups did it. But any understanding, there's no descriptions, you're not handed any literature about it. It happens before you ever think about it. And we're talking about, I don't mean seconds, we're talking about years. It happens before you ever think about it, before the subject ever comes up. As you already see what it is, that's what being a kid is. And you see that, but there's no words for it. You don't need any words for it. It's never come up in discussion. You didn't know it would ever end. Everyone sees it. The first two groups, and you understand that everybody has had the mystical experience. Everyone's already had it. Everyone has already looked reality. They have looked God. They have looked the soul. They have looked the Big Bang. They have looked the core of the universe dead in the eye. Had no choice. You didn't go looking for it. It looked you dead in the eye. And there it was. All groups, everybody. And that's, if we're, then those two groups, then that splits. Those two groups, their attempt is to make life interesting through more complex behavior. If you'll think about 1 second, what is being civilized? What is being ordinary? What is being middle class? Not meant as an attack. What do ordinary people do? They may whine about it and drag their feet verbally, but they will end up getting more education, getting a job. They'll stand around even during recreational time, staying at a bar after work, and what do they talk about? They talk about the common middle-class things of life. They do not stand around and talk about philosophical possibilities. They do not talk about the theoretical possibilities of where we came. They do not wax philosophical. They wax financially, socially. They wax, well, if they do any philosophy, their philosophizing is about the kinds of things that they have found does make life tolerable. That's what they sit around and talk about is, did you buy a new BMW? Have you driven that new one? Yeah. And you could say, well, that's got nothing to do with increasing a man's spirit, his understanding of life. Big deal. I mean, why you want a mystical medal for observing that? But you notice those two, that's their job, is to press on, and they make life tolerable. They make life apparently Well, to them it is more complex. Remember, they've already had the mystical experience, just like you did. Everybody's already had it. And then it's like, well, now what? And so they think, well, I'm 13. Let's see, if I start saving now for a Jaguar, if I start saving my money for a scholarship, or I start applying for scholarships. And so they do that in ordinary life, which makes life more complex. And the third group, and some of its hangers-on, historically take shots at them for that very reason, in case you need any more observations of the great balance of justice in life, is that real low-rent mystics and just misfits will attack the first two groups on the basis of being civilized bourgeois Philistines, of people thinking that the important thing in life is a new car. Ha! Well, I'm glad I see through that. And of course, there's always people driving a '59 Pinto that say that. How about that? Those people, look at them standing in those fancy fern bars in their suits. They spent, I'm just betting they spent $300 or $400 on a suit. I paid $300 for my car. Ha ha, boy, what a bunch of idiots. Yeah, bunch of idiots. That's true. Except for this, remember this, the possibility of my fairy tale being applicable to our universe. Think about this. At one time, for 1 second, and let's say that you're staying out there, I wasn't attacking either group. Now let's say that you're out there and you're really a would-be, you consider yourself a serious seeker of mystical, transcendental reality. And you look around and you think, well, I'm obviously on the right track. I hadn't found my school, I hadn't found the great truth, I hadn't found the book, but I'm obviously on the right track vis-a-vis. That's not the track of those people. They're in there right now. I could be in there, I could have a job. I could afford to go in a bar like that. But what are they up to? All they're talking about is new clothes, the fashions this year, getting a new car, and they already got a car fancier than they can't even drive a car. They can't even open up the car they got. It's not even paid for. And you can say, well, that more power to them. I don't begrudge them that, but I am on to something else. I am seeking something completely different. Well, maybe. But now consider, they are making their life more complex. Huh? Now back to my original description of the third group, the would-be mystics, and all the historical accepted descriptions of what the efforts are about and what they lead to is to strip away this faux complexity of life, to bring one back to a simple connection with the great cosmic forces, or a simple direct perception back to the truth. So it sounds like, certainly, that the third group is on the just absolutely opposite thing than the first two groups, who are out there making their life more and more complex. They're certainly not up to any kind of mystical effort themselves, because rather than trying to simplify their life and trying to clean the senses, trying to strip away the kind of blinders, the crude, lustful, carnal blinders that cloud our minds, these people are trying to increase it. They're not there trying to simplify their lives, trying to get out of debt. They're standing there considering going in debt even more, making their life more complex. It's bad enough they're cheating on their wife and got a mistress. Two of them over here thinking about they got a third one in mind, trying to figure, how can I keep my wife? It's bad enough now, and I got this other girl, but now I'm thinking about getting another one. And his buddies go, woo, what a concept. Not only cheating on your wife, but now cheating on your girlfriend. Both of them, ooh. And it sounds, hey, they're new drugs. Have you tried such drug? It is all an attempt, if we were going along my fairy tale, and put it here, it's an attempt for them, once they saw, they had the mystical experience, you and them both. You found it interesting. They found it sort of stark and somewhat disappointing. It's like, this is it? But then it's as though life, and the third group then looks at it though in a different way, but then it's as though life sort of gives you a nudge. After you've looked at point blank in the eye and you had the experience, it kind of gave a nudge and you looked around. And rather than just this point blank stark reality, this blank wall that said, this is it, it kind of gave you a nudge where you're standing there and you look around. And there it is. Great showroom of sports cars, beautiful women or men, houses, your little stirrings down in your hormones understand what fame is. It's being able to take not just a transient joy of sex, but trying to freeze it. I could be famous. I could have people point at me. Maybe I could become a semi-alpha dog with some small pack. I could start my own business and make them be, following wolves, make them work for me. In other words, they have this moment that they could go bonkers. There's reality, and it's like, life understands, obviously. And it kind of gives you a nudge where you're looking at the wall, and you look over, and ooh, beautiful blonde sitting in a red Corvette with pizzas. Well, you can obviously make up your own. The thing is, as life goes, you don't have to stand here and stare at that wall. You don't have to dream of Tibet or meditating. That's not it. You kind of got a choice. Look over there, and you go, ooh. And so that's what you do. Now, if my fairy tale were applicable to this universe, then do you see, now we're turning it inside out and backwards on itself as we go. It's not just a one-time house of mirrors, you understand. Because if all of that were true in this universe, then the third group, while believing that they're trying to simplify their life, are trying to do what? Compared to the first group, if what I just described were true as opposed to what they believe is true. Then where would that put the third group? Was that a dirty question after turning it inside out 14 times? Okay, well, let me go back to my own descriptions. How about the practices? The accepted traditional ways to try and have that kind of experience, to try and understand what life's about. How complex they are, without any doubt. Nobody has to tell you, and as soon as they do, you go, yeah, I understand that. You don't have to warn me, I understand. I've had 40 years of going down one road or 20 years, and I understand this is completely different. And I know how complex life's been up till now, just ordinary life, just getting by, so I can imagine what I'm in for. To use everyday parlance, what if that is ass backwards? Well, now, if the first two groups are backwards, of course it's not really backwards, but you understand. Your view, if you're part of the third group, your view of them, that they're on the wrong track. They don't know what they're missing. What if it is that at one time they look and go, ooh, I'd like to miss that. And so it's not that they don't know what they're missing, it's at one time they stared reality right in the face for a split second, everybody does. Instead of worrying about judgment day comes someday and the big old God's going to sit there and look down at you and say, all right, here's your one chance, explain yourself. Again, what if it's backwards? You've already been through it. Except don't worry about God. It was like you in reality, it gave you a judgment already. Long time ago. You had looked at each other, and that's its test. It's not a judgment day of what have you done. It's like how you wired up. What might you do? And you stare, and approximately 99% of the world looks away. Mystics don't look away. People like you go, and you keep waiting for the rest, but things are in a hurry. I mean, reality's got to deal with billions of people, but see, everybody else glances off. It's there you are, you in reality, just stark, stripped naked, and you look at each other, and just instantly, everybody else looks off. You're supposed to. In a sense, it stares you down, or you just can't stand to look at it. What? And you look off, and sure enough, there's fame, fortune, social position, all the goodies of the world. And you go, oh, and you're going off. And then it's like the next little wired up person, the next little human comes up, and you got the instant stare, no judgment book, no nothing. It's just that life, or God, if that's what it was, instead of him looking to judge you for your past acts, he's judging, what's your potential? Or you could look at it another way. That makes it sound fancy, like you kind of people are selected. It could be that's almost like damage control or it's quality control. That everybody's supposed to look off, and some don't look off. And they go, wow, Now, I just have to start making it up. But the would-be mystics of the world, instead of looking off and then wander off, but see, they had their chance, if you want to call it that. It's not that they don't, it's not to tell the Philistines of the world, to tell the ordinary middle class, boy, you don't know what life's about. That is somewhat of misspeak. Now, they can't defend themselves, and they may even say, well, you're right. No, I don't know. I used to think about things like that in college, and I gave up. I don't know. And you say, well, you have no idea what life's about. You're out there just living a life trying to be successful, and what's it going to get you? You're going to die. They're not going to bury your car in the grave with you in your fancy house. Yeah, I know. Don't you feel bad? Yeah, I guess. But to say you got no idea what life's about is not exactly true. Because everyone had that one time. And if you'd like to look at it in a quite real sense as quality control, you were supposed to look off and go, ooh. And you go, oh. And then you wandered on off and you followed education. You followed just ordinary life. But to say that they had no idea what life's about is not quite right. But then this 1% or so, as your time came, there it was, and it looked right at you. And you didn't look off. I've already done one a little bit. It's not important. It's not just one reaction, but it's instead of you looking off like, the would-be mystics of the world, I could do 2 or 3 versions. It's like, wow, now, well, finally. Except suddenly you're about gone, you're pushed out of the way about as quick as they were. It's like the assembly line keeps going, but they apparently, the 99%, they apparently do it themselves by just looking off. Because as soon as they look off, it's as though there's a reason. It's not they're looking off and then pushed out of the way. It's they look off and it's like they're attracted out of the way. Oh, and they're going off. For the next 70 years, they wander around doing, oh. The would-be mystics, there they are. They had their second. And there it is, reality, the experience. And you don't stare off, but it's like the assembly line goes and suddenly the thing's gone. And you didn't actually look off yourself. But you're suddenly like, next, and you're gone, and you think, what happened? So you and them both had the experience, but they blinked. They looked off and went, what? Oh, hi. Hey. You didn't blink, you went, but the line just, you moved on out of the way. And there it was like this big old eye examining you of reality. And you went, oh, finally. And it was just a split second, and you were waiting for more. And so you're staring at a cement block wall of the factory, the assembly line. Where'd it go? And you still didn't turn around to see the goodies. I mean, you knew they were there. You found out very shortly. But you kept waiting like, I'm here. Or you're here. And it's gone in a blink. So using that description, rather than what would apparently be, without any doubt, the correct description of this kind of effort, to wit, my original description of the would-be mystics are trying to simplify. Of course, that's not it. No. That is, they're trying to simplify through this great, complex, whatever one they happen to stumble on, or whatever one you ever read about, of meditating, studying the holy word of some, the scriptures of some group, studying the culture, the traditions of some peoples, taking certain kinds of drugs on a certain kind of schedule. Whatever it is, there's always some kind of system. And it is complex. They do not hide it. All you got to do is ask, will this make me a mystic? Will this give me a cosmic experience next week? Oh, no. Very complex. But what if? And it's not exactly backwards, is why I played with the words 5 or 10 minutes ago. It's not just backwards. It's more fun than that. It's not just backwards. But rather than it being a very complex, now we're talking about the kind of mystical systems and practices and traditions, rather than being the complex, almost impenetrable, obtuse, oblique, staggering. What if all it is that one big eye at one time? The stark blank reality looking at you, and all the complex systems themselves are slightly misnamed. And remember, we're talking about the third group that would apparently be, in some way, exempt from the ordinary, from the routine drives motivating the first two groups. It's not that every would-be mystic suddenly can comprehend what's going on, but they would apparently be involved with a purer search in life. Not that there's anything wrong with cars and all that, but they apparently are involved not with just the acquisition of the ephemeral, of just cars and of wealth and etc., is they are actually trying to scratch that cosmic edge, that great spiritual hunger, that great desire that if I could just see into the center of the universe, etc. Back to my fairy tale, what if everybody has already done that? Everybody has already done that, and 99% of the people, as they were supposed to, blinked. I was nice about it. I could put it other ways. I'm sure you can fill in your own. It's like they saw it and went, eh. And it's like, I shouldn't weaken and get warm and charming with it. But it's almost as though, like at one time, life gave you a choice. Would you like to be a mystic or just an ordinary person? And it gave you a split second. And everybody, and you're supposed to. You're supposed to go, oh, and it goes next. And that's all it needs to know. I mean, if you just have to hesitate. And if it says, I got this hesitate, and boom, you're down the line. You turn and look, and there you go. You just wander off like the rest of your life. You like that. Now, if that be a valid description, then you understand that there's a certain kind of misdirected effort. Effort's not the real problem, by the way. It's misdirected perception of what the effort should be. That is, that the third group will accept without any question. I mean, it doesn't even arise the complexity of the practices, of the efforts, of the systems. No one ever, there's nothing to question. My God, staring into the face of God or reality or getting in touch with the actual heart of the universe, we're not talking about go out and sign for some kind of course about how to make $500 a day repossessing people's real estate. We're talking about something, an ordinary person would just probably become speech. An ordinary person, if they were a would-be mystic, would go, I can't talk to you. I mean, this kind of thing is almost beyond description. It is so complex. You kind of Philistines, you wouldn't understand. People devote their whole life, ruin their health, and give away everything they got and sit in a position until their body atrophies and they become like a human paperweight. What would you know? No one questions that it might be that kind of price. But what if it's not? What if they're already doing that? The first two groups are already doing that. They have made life more complex. You just don't look at it if you're part of the third group. You don't look at it, but the first two, in a sense, are on a great mystical quest. That is, they stared point-blank reality. They looked into the genes, the DNA of life. Everybody did for a second. They went, nah. Do we have a choice? There's something else to do in life? Yep. And so now they're out in the practice trying to forget this. Well, I knew you'd like that. Forget's not really it, but it works. The description is like they're going, well, I'm not going back to that. I'd rather go in debt. I'd rather keep buying new cars every year. I'd rather keep getting divorces and keep increasing my alimony. Give me something to live for. What the hell? See, there you sit around and stare at your navel and go nuts, right? Right. Yeah. So if that has validity, though, then think about the third group. When I suggest to you that perhaps they are misdirected in their perception to think, as regards that, they think, well, if there's any exception to that, if there's an alternative way to go, it's to escape from that kind of false complexity of life. That I'm going into now a mystical complexity of life. I'm going to give up this kind of insane rat race of living here in Manhattan, going nuts, giving myself ulcers and high blood pressures, trying to get ahead in life. There's nothing to get ahead to. I'm going to throw it all away, give it all up, and I'm going to go in a monastery in Tibet and give myself high blood pressure and ulcers over there in a more simple setting. Not just physically, that I'm going now and I'm going to wrestle with that infinite spider web that is the mental and spiritual delusions of man. What if that's somewhat misnamed? And it's the thing that they believe they're looking for. They've already seen it, them and the Philistines. If you fall into that, you might understand the proper basis of many of these would-be mystics that feel like what I'm doing, the way I talk, is an attack on that. It's an attack on, if it was an attack, it's on useless effort in that direction. And, that's better than that, useless perception, misdirected perception. Because if you followed all of what I've said for the last 50-odd minutes, then you'd see that the idea that the systems, the approach, the traditions, trying to devote your life to some great experience, what if it is not properly perceived as being a complex affair? What if it is the, quote, mystics version, the third group's version, of the first two group of Philistines, their versions? That the third group could sit there and laugh at the first two, that, well, they keep buying cars, they go in debt, they'll get a car paid for, they'll get another one, they keep changing jobs, they change boyfriend, girlfriend. They just needlessly muddying up their life, whereas I am trying to do otherwise. Are you sure? Are you sure that by pursuing, even if you don't do it, you just keep reading about, God, it'd be great if I could join a Zen monastery, if I could give up and go over there and live a simple life. Now, but it sounds simple, except what are you dreaming of? What you're actually dreaming of, an ordinary, routine, third-class mystic, is dreaming of, get over there and make my inner life even more complex. And they might go along with it and say, well, you're right. Because it's a complex thing to see into the depths of reality. Unless my fairy tale's correct, and that you've already seen it. Everybody's already seen it. And so the idea that this is a complex affair to be able to see that. What if these kind of mystical traditions are just the mystics' version of, well, let's see, I'm down to about 20, I only got, 10 payments left on that JAG? Hey, I bet if I swing a little creative financing, I can get in debt even worse, maybe take a second job. See, in the third group, last of those two, what if pursuing a complex, no question, properly complex mystical tradition is their version? Leaves damn little to laugh at in life. Well, damn little in the way of other people and their activities. To realize that you pass a showroom and you see a guy in there and you realize you just dream, you just know he's going in debt even worse for a car that he doesn't need or whatever it is, and you go, ha! That's why you're out there in the street walking as God intended on your way to go further into debt and buy some new mystical book. Or perhaps even better, I'm on the way walking. I gave up worrying about I'm walking to India to find. Useless behavior, unprofitable behavior is one thing because everybody does that. But what if it's useless and unprofitable perception of what the behavior should be? Far too simple. Far too simple. Unless you know where to look and not blink. Now I think about it, I wonder if it's life writing me those letters. It's not just these storefront mystics all around the world writing me saying, oh, you traitor, you should be, what do you come off talking about that? You don't know what kind of great activities we're involved with. You didn't know our great teacher, God bless him. I just realized, what if it's life? Because it's funny, they never put an exact return address, where I can get hold of them. They never say, look me up. Next time you're in Stuttgart or Rome. That would explain a lot, wouldn't it? Because that'd be horrible to consider that it comes down, you finally find out that life itself's an old sorehead. I'm with you, I don't even think about that.